Working as an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's a stone wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Saturday. Congratulations, you made it through yet another week of the grind, Monday through Friday. And we're happy to have you with us today on rumble.com/amradpod. If you haven't already, give us a nice thumbs up and follow the channel. And do subscribe if your heart compels you to do that. You can also check us out on the audio format on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart. Give us a 5-star review there, and definitely subscribe so you get the shows when we update and drop them there every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 10:30 Eastern time, guys. It is a Saturday. It will be a Saturday grab bag edition. We're excited to get to it. And, just as a personal side, I'm really grateful to be here with you all. Thank you for being an audience, for giving me this platform, and ultimately for giving me an excuse to get out of dad duty today. Because, for those who don't know, 2 little boys playing football in the state of Florida, and Florida looked over at Texas and said, hold my beer. We're doing 2.5-hour practices 6 days a week for ages 6 through 14 in preparation for Pop Warner football. If that sounds intense to you, let me tell you a little bit about this town. We have a standalone Pop Warner field with a full grandstand, and the kids will pour out of a tunnel to Metallica Enter Sandman with black ice or dry ice smoke playing for them as they take the field here in a few weeks. Let's go Hawks. We bleed orange. It's intense down here in Florida, but you all got me out of that today in the hot Florida sun. So while my kids are sweating away, I'm going to be breaking down some important stuff with you. We're going to be talking about the McDonald's HR hack that went on, some firings over at the Department of Justice, some proof that Mark Zuckerberg could in fact be the Antichrist. There's a divorcee who is now on the hook for paying for her ex-husband's tranny surgery. And Coca-Cola going back to pure cane sugar, because we are so back, baby. Back and better than ever. This is America. We are based. So we're going to get to all that. We got a bunch to get to. But before we do, let's get our sponsor out of the way for the day. And that's going to be the M-Clip Company. M-Clip.com. M-Clip.com. These are really cool money clips. You can get your initials monogrammed on them. You get your favorite Major League Baseball team. You can also get the Suspendables logo, which has our logo, our emblem, the upside down badge, all of it. 10% off for these money clips, which have a lifetime guarantee, made in America. And the promo code is suspendable at m-clip.com. So intro out of the way. Now let me intro my fellow co-host and cohort, compadre and friend, Garrett O'Boyle at GOB Actual.
All right, turn it off. Turn it off. Otherwise, YouTube will.
I am the voice.
Video, so we have to.
I will be the voice of the Port Orange Hawks this year.
Really?
And responsible for the intro music I'm
The
not going to shake
voice.
things up too much because I don't think you could do much better than Metallica. But it'll be interesting to do play by play for a bunch of 6 and 7-year-olds who are not quite sure what direction they need to run
Oh, the clothesline tackle on number 17.
in. Interesting you say 17. That's my son's number.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, the stars have aligned.
All right. So without further ado, let's begin with, I mean, you weren't in the FBI when the OPM hack happened. I think that happened around 2016. So
Right.
predated your employment. For those who don't know, the Chinese hacked into the Office of Personnel Management, which is like HR for the entire federal government, and compromised millions of federal employees' documents. And you do a full scope background check if you're going into federal employment. So the Chinese have all my information. And as a result, I got LifeLock given to me for a year, courtesy of the US taxpayer. I wonder who got the kickback on that contract.
Gee, thanks. Because it comes from China.
Well, you would hope that the federal government has a pretty robust cybersecurity system set up, but it is, after all, government. So maybe not quite. And you would hope maybe McDonald's, as a global entity, is one of the most recognizable brands on the face of the earth, would have a robust cybersecurity for their HR, but apparently not.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. We've been hacked.
Yep. This is the piece that actually exposed that 64 million McDonald's job applications were exposed, and they were exposed, and also Wired magazine covered it. And you can see from the title, McDonald's AI hiring bot exposed millions of applicants' data to hackers who tried the password 123-456.
You don't exactly have to be from Anonymous to figure that one out.
So breaking down the Wired piece, if you want a job at McDonald's today, there's a good chance that you have to talk to Olivia. And I don't know how much you've done on the job search front, seeing as how you are technically an employee of the FBI still, Garrett. But I'm kind of neck deep in this. It is a different world right now. I mean, I applied to the FBI in paper, so it's
Really?
been a minute or 3, but you're having to interface with AI a lot. And even if you want to go do the Kamala Harris and do fries at McDonald's, you're having to apply using artificial intelligence. And I did find a piece we'll have to cover down on next week about how all these employers are now combating the fact that they are getting AI generated resumes, and they're like, well, that's not fair. And I'm like, hey, you've had AI set up as the guardrails for a while. So, force meets force. So if you apply to McDonald's, you have to interface with this artificial intelligence bot known as Olivia that apparently is very annoying. And that was what inspired these journalists / hackers to look into it, because they really just wanted to do a story about how AI was part of McDonald's, right? So Ian Carroll, Sam Curry revealed that they found simple methods to hack into the back end of the chatbot platform at mchire.com. The data appears to include as many as 64 million records, including applicants' names, email addresses, phone numbers. They guessed that the administrator account's username and password was 123-456.
I thought the people using that as a password went away in like 2008. I mean, most places that you have to log into, they're not letting you use that password. They say it's not strong enough. But McDonald's, they just set their own mechanisms and bypass it. And now Ian Carroll somehow is hacking in.
This was the joke of Spaceballs, right? That was like the code to the nuke or whatever the bomb was, and they're like, "What's the password?" And they finally break down the president. He's like 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're like, "Is that your suitcase password?" So this is a movie from, was that in the 80s?
I think it was the 80s. Yeah, that's classic, by the way, if you haven't seen it.
All right. So Wired reached out to McDonald's for comment, and they also to their AI platform. They sort of outsourced that. Spokesperson for this outsourced organization, which is called Paradox, shared a blog post the company planned to publish that confirmed that, yes, that was in fact true. The company noted that only a fraction of the records that they accessed contained personal information, though. So, I mean, you hacked into the system, but you didn't get much. I think they were more concerned as journalists who were not intent on blackmailing or stealing identities, of just sort of letting them know. But they're saying like, yeah, you completely infiltrated us, but you didn't really get information. So we didn't do that bad. But, in their defense, they kind of owned it. They said, yeah, we're going to have to upgrade it. You got us. I kind of wish the federal government would have taken a cue from that and pertained to, maybe cybersecurity for the OPM hack, maybe for closing out the Epstein case and saying, "Hey, just move on." There was never a there. So
Government may be the quintessential example of not taking ownership, not taking responsibility, always passing the buck. I am surprised that McDonald's didn't do that entirely, but because as we've seen this week too, CEOs love to pass the buck, like the guy who was with his mistress at the Coldplay concert, and everybody there with him knew, because you could tell the lady next to him was like, which means she knew. Everybody knew except the wife. But hey, I digress.
what's interesting, and we don't have this on the rundown, Garrett, but for that, the two paramours there, I guess it was the CEO and the HR director who were caught on the Jumbotron, and he basically said, like, it's Coldplay's fault because they put me on the Jumbotron, which was a violation of my privacy.
No.
But
Like, did you read the small print when you bought your ticket? Because I'm sure there's some caveat in there that you agreed to.
I
You don't
mean,
have an expectation of privacy at the freaking Coldplay concert, my guy.
and another movie reference for the day, 40-Year-Old Virgin. I mean, Coldplay, man, they've gone completely like 180, bizarro Superman, because 40-Year-Old Virgin was, hey, you know how I know you're gay? You listen to Coldplay. Now Coldplay is representation of heterosexual, like hypersexualized stepping out. Like my appetite and desire cannot be satisfied. So, like, comeback story of the year, Coldplay.
Maybe of the decade.
Let's move over to Department of Justice, where there were some personnel matters. Personnel is policy, after all. It's total personnel warfare. And
Allegedly.
a couple of these, I think, are worth going into because of the way that they're portrayed, and then what actually is involved with them is worth getting into. So Bloomberg Law talked about Attorney General Bondi firing her personal ethics chief as the DOJ purge continues. So before I get to the piece, a personal ethics chief, I mean, that's the job title, perhaps. But to me, it implies that the Attorney General of the United States has somebody at her side who's just her personal person, like her own Jiminy Cricket, right? Like, that's how it's being characterized. It's not somebody who's in the employ of the government who you go to and say, like, hey, you know, I've been invited to go to, like, do a community engagement. If there's a dinner served, like, am I allowed to accept that? Like, that's sort of like what the ethics person is, right?
Yeah. It makes me think too, just the way it's worded there, her personal ethics chief. So she can't govern her own personal ethics, but she's on the top of the list of the org chart. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, a permanently entrenched bureaucrat needs to tell you what's right and wrong, Madam
Good
Attorney
luck.
General, Chief Law Enforcement Officer for the United States government. So,
which you'll probably get to this. So was this some person she brought with her into DOJ and now decided she doesn't?
no,
Okay,
it
all
was
right,
someone she inherited,
Of
and
course,
they
of
might have
course.
had a little bit of problems because Pam Bondi fired her personal ethics advisor, removing the Justice Department's top official responsible for counseling the most senior political appointees. His name is Joseph Terrell. He's a career attorney who'd spent nearly 20 years at the DOJ. He received a termination letter July 11th. It didn't state the reason for his immediate removal. I mean, they just pulled him. It was probably just a reduction in force. They thought, you know, dang it, we have the orange man in there who's literally Hitler, so ethics don't matter anymore. So Joseph Terrell, who transferred from FBI in 2018 after a decade of service there, services, I mean, come on, he worked there and got a paycheck. That's not service. He went over to the ethics office. His portfolio included reviewing, approving financial disclosure. This is really what his job is. Financial disclosures, making sure that you're turning that over if there's any compromising material or conflicts of interest. Recusals, again, conflict of interest. Hey, you shouldn't be investigating that person, even if you don't think that you're in any way exposed to it. Like, let's just give that to somebody else who's uninvolved. Waivers of conflicts of interest, advice on travel. I mean, that sort of thing. But his removal is separate, but potentially related to roughly 20 employees involved in Jack Smith's investigation, because Joseph Terrell advised Jack Smith's office on ethics matters, and he approved $140,000 of pro bono legal fees from an outside law office that said, we want to go after literally Hitler. Can we help?
So this person was in charge of ethics, huh? And okay, so we also saw, and maybe you'll get to it. So sorry if I'm stepping on your toes here, but Maureen Comey got a similar letter as this Terrell guy,
Hmm.
and they love this claim that they didn't say why. There was no reason why. At least for Maureen Comey, is it cited Article 2, which you would think that these career bureaucrat attorneys would be familiar with because, I don't know, they went to law school, so presumably they learned about the Constitution, but maybe not. Maybe they didn't learn about that and don't know what Article 2 means. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with these firings because this, I think this is kind of what we wanted, what we expected, what we hoped for, what we voted for, what part of the mandate was, yet it took until July for some reason.
Hmm. And you did. You pivoted over to Maureen Comey, who I don't know anything about. She's a assistant United States attorney. She's a daughter of James Comey. I think he made reference several times to, his daughters being the reason that now he had to become an action figure for Kamala Harris. So I presume that she's a dyed-in-the-wool communist Marxist,
Yeah.
right?
She looks too much like her dad for
Mhm.
me, for comfort's sake.
And I have my suspicions that I'll get to in a second, but I think that our suspicions about her character, not knowing who she is, we know that she was involved with the Epstein, the Ghislaine Maxwell prosecution, and the P. Diddy prosecutions. But I mean, she's not an outspoken politico. So, where does she really fall? Maybe she can put that aside. Maybe she's of the political left and she just wants to do due process and prosecute cases that come before her. But you can't help from the Politico getting her statement that she felt compelled to send a message out to her colleagues upon her firing because she's a pedantic jerk, just like her dad. And this is a quote from Maureen Comey. If a career prosecutor can be fired without reason, fear may seep into the decisions of those who remain. Do not let that happen. Fear is the tool of a tyrant, wielded to suppress independent thought. Instead of fear, let this moment fuel the fire that already burns at the heart of this place, a fire of righteous indignation at abuses of power, of commitment to seek justice for victims, of dedication to truth above all else, like the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, or righteous indignation about abuses of power, like your father approving Russiagate.
Yeah. Uh, what was the word she used as the tool of the tyrant?
Fear.
Fear. Fear is the tool of the tyrant. Okay, Steve. Can we break this down momentarily here?
Send it.
Fear is the tool of the tyrant. Correct. I would agree. I would agree that that's correct. But let's look at the last decade or so. Who was using fear to implement their tyranny, Maureen? It was you. It was your dad. It was Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. Because I think it was just yesterday, a couple more bombshell discoveries. And I think people who've really been paying attention already knew that this was the case. We just didn't have the documents, but Tulsi Gabbard declassified some stuff and allegedly referred it over to DOJ for charges. But the tyrant using fear was not Pam Bondi or Donald Trump or anybody from this current administration. They were the ones who were on the receiving end. January 6th, anybody? That was one of your main protected disclosures. Why you were walked off the plank of the pirate ship, as it were, because you said, this actually doesn't seem right because we're using fear to mandate what we do as law enforcement instead of facts. And for that, Steve, well, here you are now 3 years later doing a podcast. But she's just filling this gap with, I'm going to write this powerful email on my way out the door, and then it's going to get published. I have no doubt in my mind that Maureen Comey is going to be just fine, just because of her namesake, and now she's going to be heralded as a champion of what it looks like when you're on the receiving end of literally Hitler.
And her namesake is interesting to me because if this was indeed a personnel issue, if she was we've identified a dyed-in-the-wool, godless Marxist communist who's working within the Department of Justice, we need to remove her. It is July, so it's been 6 months. To me, this is tantamount to a fire department hiring an arsonist who goes out and sets fire to a city block, and then the fire department fires that arsonist and expects some modicum of cheers and applause. I think, and was my contention when the New York Post reached out to me, and I gave them a comment on this, her last name's Comey, and we're trying to get off the X as it pertains to Jeffrey Epstein. So now we have a Comey, and Donald Trump has messaged the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, and some of the names he threw out there: Barack Obama, James Comey, Christopher Wray. And I didn't throw out Christopher Wray because we can't talk about Christopher Wray, but he threw out James Comey. Well, so now we have Comey, who is connected to Epstein, and unless you're paying attention, you wouldn't really realize that, you know, they're not really connected over this firing, but it's sort of like red meat, get a PR victory. We fired a Comey who was involved with the Epstein, so can everybody move on? And also distracting from other things. I'm still waiting on the January 6th pipe bomb that we were promised information about recently, or the Dobbs leak, the Dobbs leak, which wasn't illegal, or the White House cocaine investigation, all these sorts of promises that they failed to deliver on. Well, we will give you transparency being code word for things we like, and pretend that we've actually satisfied the mandate that you sent, that you wanted certain things done. We didn't follow through on those, but we gave you other things that are kind of good, right?
Supposedly. But I guess I can't get past this total personnel warfare. And call me crazy, Steve, but I'm starting to think that people like this Joseph Terrell, Maureen Comey, maybe we're going to see a couple more, or like this tranche of documents being declassified yesterday. Something tells me it all has to do with the big fumble that was the Epstein files over the last couple weeks. And now it's let's do something to get a win here and show them that we actually do care, and we are going to implement our method and our plan, but it's just going to take 6 to 8 months. And see, look, we're right at 6 months. And on top of it, we talked about this the other day. What did Donald Trump say? He said, I'm going to direct my AG Pam Bondi to release credible information. So who's gonna deem what's credible? See, we like to talk about language here, and language certainly matters. So what would be considered credible? But hey, let's just keep the wins coming, I guess.
If you're truly interested in transparency, I would like to know why Maureen Comey was fired. I'm not going to shed a tear for her.
No.
Tell me what she did wrong.
What did she do wrong?
Are you holding her accountable for something? Be transparent about that. She's no longer in the employ of the federal government. And don't give me this, well, we don't talk about personnel matters.
Right.
You fired her.
Mm-hmm.
Was it just because her last name was Comey? Or are you actually holding somebody accountable? Because I know who you're not holding accountable, subject to the next story, from Catholic Vote. So a state representative from New Hampshire, his name is Tybalt, which is funny.
Yeah.
It's not Tim Tybalt.
Any relation?
He's demanding transparency from the FBI due to their targeting of the Catholics with the radical traditional Catholic memo.
How do we know about that, Steve? How do we know about the radical traditional Catholic memo for maybe those who haven't been paying attention?
We can't say his name. He's Voldemort. Definitely 100% don't say Kyle Serafin's name. Oh, if you say Kyle Serafin 3 times in the dark, he appears behind you. So James Tybalt, Republican, he had to file a Freedom of Information Act request.
No.
Now, he is a state rep, not federal. So perhaps that is the route that he would have to go. But he filed a FOIA, and we know that also that your senator has had to issue subpoenas. So request for the FBI on July 14th, he's seeking records related to the memorandum targeting traditional Catholic communities. James Tybalt requesting detailed records on the memo's creation and its approval, the number of locations and Catholic communities that were infiltrated, and any FBI operations conducted, because we were assured by Christopher Wray, which I believe was during the Biden administration, which I believe would still be within the statute of limitations on any sort of perjury charge, that it was limited to one particular document in one particular field office. But then Chuck Grassley revealed that over 1,000 employees from multiple field offices were able to get that. And there were actually 13 additional documents that were created out of it. So that would seem to be perjury from the former director of the FBI, and he should be held accountable for that, as Stanley Meter, who I think now is gone. I don't know where he is on this, but who else? Who else among the 1,000 FBI employees? And how about the other employees who went after the individual who brought this to he who must be not named, Kyle Seraphin? So an insider, an actual person located this, gave it to Kyle Seraphin, and lost his job.
hmm And another piece of this for me is we've shown it, we've talked about it, we've tweeted about it. Stanley Meter, if you didn't know, he was the special agent in charge of the Richmond field office, which is where this core radical traditional Catholic memo originated out of. In sworn testimony, he admitted, I didn't actually read the whole thing, but yes, I do appreciate the perspective. So he skimmed through it because he was the final approving authority on it, and appreciated the perspective of the intel folks who put it together to target people's First Amendment religious freedom and to try to go into Catholic parishes and recruit confidential human sources. Because if you practice the Latin Mass, you're a terrorist in these people's eyes. And okay, so fine. He's been removed or fired or forced to retire. Great. What about the Chief Division Counsel? What about the Associate Division Counsel? What about the intel analyst who did the lion's share of putting that original document together? What about all the people at the other field offices, which one of them was right here in my backyard, the Milwaukee field office, and there were some way out on the West Coast that were included in these additional documents that we learned about later after Chris Wray lied. What about all those people? Have they lost their jobs? Have their security clearances been suspended? And people would say, well, wait a second. You guys talk about the security clearance a lot being used as a weapon. Wouldn't that be what you want to do? No, because there are legitimate reasons people should have their security clearance suspended. One of which is not, we're going to accuse that you leaked to the media knowing that you didn't, and we're going to keep you suspended. What are we? 1,027 days today, I think, for me. But you can use that mechanism in an appropriate way and say, hey, you clearly don't understand the Constitution and you have all of this power. We're going to suspend your clearance. Mm-hmm. And that's how you put these people out to pasture. But no, it's they retired. Typically, it's they retired. And look, they're no longer part of the problem because they retired. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you don't think it's like the 7-headed beast that once one head gets chopped off, another one grows right in its place. I mean, but hey, optically, we got rid of the top guy who was involved with that. But did you get rid of the problem people, or are we just going to focus on regular criminal matters now and pretend that the FBI suddenly has changed, even though we're using all the same people for the most part?
I just as a refresher, because I do think that the radical traditional Catholic intelligence report or bulletin, whatever the product was, it's a little bit like Russia. People know bad things happened, but don't really know. Brief refresher on this one. Okay. An intel analyst self-deployed into parishes. And from reporting that we've gotten, this is an individual who has quite a bit of animosity against the Catholic Church, educated at Georgetown Jesuit University. So Jack Ryan style tried to infiltrate parishes because he doesn't like the Catholic Church. He cited sources from the Southern Poverty Law Center, The Atlantic, and Salon.com in authoring his intelligence report.
Which are all illegitimate sources from a true intelligence standpoint, by the way.
And then the takeaway from the actual intelligence report, if you care to read it, says things to the effect of the people who attend Catholic Mass, Latin Mass, are primed to become anti-government extremists because they hold pro-life, pro-traditional marriage, pro-border sovereignty, and pro-Second Amendment beliefs. And then also the bureaucratic way, because these people are kind of dullards to begin with, but they're trying to jam a square peg into a round hole. They knew what they were doing was a violation of the caveat that the FBI doesn't investigate First Amendment protected activity. And they're like anti-government extremist. Those are kind of protected beliefs. You know what we should do? We should characterize them as racially motivated, violent, extremist white supremacists, because they're so dumb and retarded. And they thought that people who go to the Catholic Mass are probably all of similar complexion to Garrett and Steve, and probably do have a last name like O'Boyle, O'Reilly, or McDonnell. They're probably all white supremacists. Definitely not Latinos, who are a huge percentage of the Catholic faith in this country. So they produced that memo there. And yeah, Stanley Meter standing behind the director recently, and who knows where he stands right now. But as far as I know, that intelligence analyst is still there. And Christopher Wray even testified to the fact that a letter went into their file, perhaps, but nobody was fired.
Nobody was fired. Nobody was truly even disciplined. I'm sorry, a letter in your file is not discipline. It's nothing. So you got some type of counseling? Hey, don't do this again. And you only got that because
you got caught.
Because you got caught.
I appreciated your perspective before this, but we got to do something. We got to give them something here. So we're going to give you this counseling session where, as you on the way out the office door, I high five you.
I've done the mental gymnastics of trying to play it out in my head how far this would have gone had it not been made public by Kyle Seraphin. Because also, if you say Kyle Seraphin's name 3 times in rapid succession like that, allegedly an apparition appears in Kash Patel's DC condo or wherever he's staying. I don't know if that's true. It's not been verified. We'll have to get with the security detail on that. But if this wouldn't have been made public, because I think it was you who came up with the term thermal exhaust port, and that's what this was. There was certainly things that Steve or Kyle or me or other unknown FBI whistleblowers made public or were eventually made public by people in Congress or whatever the case may have been that were problematic, that were definite issues for those who are paying attention. But this radical traditional Catholic piece was the thermal exhaust port. It went thermonuclear, at least for a period of time, because of the implications of something like that, of the most powerful law enforcement / intelligence agency in the world doing something like this in an alleged land of the free, where you are free to go and worship how you want. And that includes saying the Mass in Latin or hearing the Mass in Latin and worshiping that way. But it became public, and I thought, man, especially once we found out about the additional documents from all these other field offices, how far would this have gone? How many FBI agents and analysts would have been trying to recruit people from masses or from parishes, Catholic parishes all across the country because of one rogue actor who went to Georgetown who doesn't like Catholics? It went wide enough. I believe it would have been in just about every field office.
Well, on the subject of First Amendment activity, it does occasionally pay. I mean, not so much on the American Radicals podcast. I mean, we're making dozens and dozens of dollars. And, on my X account, I almost cracked $50 this time, Garrett. I'm totally a simp for some sort of regime. I'm waiting on that Ben Shapiro slush fund to come on through.
Grifter.
But if you can cash in on fake protests, good on you, which is the subject of the next story, who this individual was offered $20 million to generate anti-Trump protests. He turned it down, but not because he's necessarily a good guy. But here's his comments on the subject matter.
Interests aligned with the organizers of the July 17th movement have approached us. And in fact, we rejected an offer that probably is worth around $20 million.
$20 million?
Correct. I mean, this is a nationwide thing, right? It's not to say I would have made $20 million personally, but the value of the contract would have been worth around that amount nationwide to organize huge demonstrations around the country. But personally, I just don't think it's effective. So it's not I'm not trying to call myself virtuous for rejecting it. What I'm saying is I'm rejecting it not because I don't want to take the business, but because, frankly, this is going to be ineffective.
So he wants to, overturn and thwart democracy, but he doesn't think that the next No Kings riot is going to be very helpful,
Yeah.
and he's probably right on that.
He just wants an effective mechanism to do so, and a $20 million contract with lots of effort and planning and work and coordinating isn't the way that he sees it being possible to be more effective than some other way. But that's hilarious. And the newscaster, if we can call him that, he even looked kind of dumbfounded there at the end.
$20 million. Oh, there's way more out there. They're paying these communists, these street animals to go out there. They don't. You see the arrest records of these individuals. They're all over the country. They'll be at one protest in one state and then another one a month later in another state because they're almost like storm chasers, right?
Yeah.
They just go where they can get paid to do it. It's not grassroots. It's completely AstroTurf.
I looked
This one,
there was like I think it was like their No Kings website or something. And so I just looked in our immediate area. I think it was around the 4th of July. I think here they were doing them on the 3rd. And I looked just in like within driving distance of me. And they were all scheduled like an hour apart, an hour later in the day. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be all the same people at every single one. They're just traveling together from Kenosha up to Milwaukee, over to Waukesha, wherever else. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is not organic. You're not getting people from these communities out to these things.
and you know that the federal law enforcement apparatus, they're going to stand up a command post to give this intel like a fusion center out to the local law enforcement partners because it's an emergency, but it's an opportunity for them to have some stats, some liaison with local partners, and then also the people who are manning those command posts can put it on their FD 954 that they were there in the moment when things were getting really spicy from the paid actors. All right. Well, we have a nice thumbnail today of Mark Zuckerberg, lizard person.
Yes.
And I got a couple stories to get to on that. First one comes from Yahoo Finance. Mark Zuckerberg is pouring billions into plans for personal superintelligence language. And this is kind of like this innocuous term, as we'll find here from this piece from Yahoo Finance. So in a Threads post, because he's still bound and determined to use Threads on Monday, Zuckerberg revealed plans to spend hundreds of billions of dollars building several massive artificial intelligence data centers across the country. It's not just data centers. He is also splashing money on high-profile hires, like these executives from multiple different outlets who have a track record. So Mark Zuckerberg is in charge of Meta, parent company for Facebook. So Meta's artificial intelligence efforts differ significantly from OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, even Microsoft and Google. So those are the other big tech entities that are pursuing AI rather aggressively. So rather than using technology to explore questions about the universe or power enterprise, cloud-based software services, Mark Zuckerberg said that the company is angling to make its AI platform a kind of, quote, personal superintelligence. Again, innocuous term. And Yahoo Finance actually caught on to that. From the piece, it says it's a vague statement, but Zuckerberg did offer that the technology will power Meta's recommendation engine. So they're going to gather data on you so that when you go to search something, it completes your term in a better process than Kamala Harris could. And then advertising capabilities. So it'll track what you're buying and continue to get you to buy things so they can make money. And then ultimately the company is still, he's really wants to use Threads, and he really wants to make the smart glasses a thing, a standalone, not just, you have to use Bluetooth technology to connect the glasses to your phone or some other device. As a standalone device, he really wants the smart glasses to become the thing, and that would be owned wholly by Meta at that point. It would be like the new iPhone would be the Meta glasses. And that presents a problem, I think, because I don't really want the mark of the beast. I don't want glasses on my face to do it. And I don't want them doing surveillance of me, which is the subject of the second piece, because Mark Zuckerberg, he's trying to raise hundreds of billions of dollars, but he might take a little bit of a personal setback in a very unique lawsuit that's been brought, reporting from Reuters. Facebook privacy practices, the focus of an $8 billion trial, which is personally targeting Mark Zuckerberg and others from Facebook. And this is a unique take on this, and I would be interested to get your perspective, Garrett. if you think that it has merits or it's just kind of like a novel way and nothing will come of it. So it's $8 billion by the shareholders for Meta. So people who own stock in Meta are personally suing Mark Zuckerberg and other current former leaders of the company. And that kicked off last week. And the claim is that from the shareholders is that Zuckerberg and others illegally harvested data of Facebook users in violation of this agreement they had with the Federal Trade Commission that was back in 2012. So for background, 2012, there was an agreement between Facebook, Meta, and the Federal Trade Commission. This entire lawsuit case hinges on a 2018. There were revelations that data from millions of Facebook users were accessed by, and here's a blast from the past, Cambridge Analytica. There was a whole thing about like, well, Donald Trump's campaign used Cambridge Analytica, and basically they were just looking on social media to try to help the campaign. But of course, everything goes back to the orange, literally Hitler, right? But it is this lawsuit about Cambridge Analytica, which is now defunct, and it worked for Trump's successful presidential campaign. So the Federal Trade Commission fined Facebook $5 billion in the wake of the scandal and said the company violated its agreement to protect user data. They handed that data over. Cambridge Analytica was able to mine it and use it to the advantage of Donald Trump's campaign, which was so good and effective, they had a 1% chance of winning on election day. But shareholders want to go after Zuckerberg and the other leaders in Meta for reimbursement. They said, like, we had to pay this. You guys had to pay this fine because you did not protect the data like you were supposed to. You personally made this decision, so you should be on the hook for it. Now, the defense from Zuckerberg and others is, well, we outsource that responsibility to a third party. You can't really blame us for this. So that's really what they're going to get down to the nitty gritty. My take, and it's maybe more outside of this one, but I think if this goes the way of the shareholders, could be awesome. Not one, because we take the lizard person out for like $8 billion. That'd be great. But secondly, and we've talked about it before, ESG, environmental societal governance, and how CEOs and board of commissioners, board of directors for companies will say, hey, look, we're not going to focus on the shareholders anymore. We're going to focus on the stakeholders being everybody. And then that way, when we make decisions that are best for stakeholders, because we're involved in ESG and we run a bank and we say we're not going to loan money to an oil company because they have produced too much carbon, and as a result, we're bringing in communism through the private sector, there's no remedy for the shareholders to sue us because we're just following ESG. We've outsourced that responsibility. And the shareholders are like, your job is to make a profit so you can give me a payoff. What are you talking about? I think if this case goes the way in the shareholders, then that will be a mechanism for us to actually maybe get so back, baby, and go after big corporations that embraced ESG so that they can bring in Marxism through the private sector. And now shareholders will have a remedy to personally hold these individuals accountable and get us back on a better track. You're muted.
How about now?
You're back. All right. Sorry about that. The joys of a live podcast.
That's odd because, anyways, shareholders certainly need a mechanism to go after people like Zuckerberg, because these people, Bezos, Zuckerberg, you fill in the blank, and these are some of the biggest. There are big enough CEOs out there that have enough money, enough power, enough standing, where they're very difficult to go after in a legal way like this. And oftentimes you don't win because you don't have the money, the lawyers, the bandwidth to keep going, to keep pushing for justice or truth. And this passing the buck, though, well, we contracted that out to a third party, so we're not responsible. No. That's not how anything in life works.
They tried the same thing with censorship. They tried to say, well, we're not striking people, we're not banning people. We outsourced that to a third party of international partners, and they determined what was hate speech, and they took those accounts down.
Right. So you're determining speech, and I kind of like the approach from the shareholders by saying, hey, your job is to make us money. That's why we bought shares in your company. And now you're you're using it to pursue an agenda that we don't think you should be doing, or that you've already agreed that you wouldn't do, like mine this data or give it to third parties who are going to mine it. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure this will take years to get to the end of the rope. Hopefully not, but it would be a win for everybody, I think, to see lizard person Zuckerberg dethroned a little bit to the tune of $8 billion.
He's got a beard now. He does jujitsu.
Yeah,
He's based, right?
Yes, right.
Let's talk about the lawsuit that didn't happen, and it was over Donald Trump suing Paramount. It was because of the 60 Minutes interview that was manipulated, where they interviewed Kamala Harris and she was retarded, and they tried really hard to make her not look retarded. So before we get the details of what the monetary amount was, here is actually from Mays a comparison of what the actual interview should have reflected back to the American people, and then what they wound up publishing.
Ooh, this will be good.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
But it seems that Prime Minister...
They effectively took an answer to a different question and inserted it as the answer because it's slightly less retarded.
Dude, is Kamala Harris the quintessential example of the Peter Principle? She has failed up her entire life, and she nearly became the president. She essentially was the president for the last few months when Joe Biden was nowhere to be seen, and Kamala was trying to take the baton from him. But it's just that answer. And every answer would be like that, where she went on some rambling, confused, non-answer tirade and then edited with some other answer, or maybe they chopped out segments of what her answer was to make it sound more coherent. But
she was never challenged because she came from California.
Yeah.
That's why we're seeing Gavin Newsom struggle so mightily when he's asked about transing 8-year-olds.
Oh, dude.
Right?
Some of those clips from his recent appearance on the Sean Ryan show were absolutely horrendous. Yet I saw a graph yesterday that he still is in pole position for the nominee for 2028. I know a lot can change by then, but good grief.
Governor American Psycho could become President American Psycho.
I also saw Miranda Devine. She tweeted one of these clips and she just said American Psycho, and I was like, she stole that from Steve Friend.
Patented, copyright, trademarked. So the lawsuit that Trump alleged was basically like an election crime against these guys. And it was a novel way to go at it. And I don't know if he would have won if it went to trial, but that wasn't the fear from Paramount. They feared if it went to an actual trial because it passed the burden that it had to where it just gets tossed out. There was going to be discovery. Discovery would have meant that Paramount would have to turn over all the emails and communications that were going on, as they were probably saying some pretty spicy things about what they were planning to do to manipulate the election. So they paid about $16 million. And then this is the quote from the story was, the company has agreed that in the future, 60 Minutes will release transcripts of interviews with eligible U.S. presidential candidates after such interviews have aired, subject to redactions as required for legal or national security concerns. So they're going to be more forthright, not on TV. They're going to depend on you to go actually read the transcript. And then, after they have the bombshell interview on 60 Minutes and people watch, then the opposing party can read the transcript. And then below the fold, page 16L in the newspaper, they'll say like, hey, look, they exposed that they inserted the wrong answer for the right question. All right. That's your media, as is the example of the next one. You were talking about contrasting, changing answers like in real time. How about the significance of the time? The significance of the time being 6 years for one Jake Tapper, who has a book to sell and credibility to try to pull out of the garbage, and he's not succeeding.
President Trump using his massive Twitter platform, 63 million followers, to spread a deranged conspiracy theory tying the death of pedophile Jeffrey Epstein in prison to the president's former political rivals, the Clintons. I'm not going to show you the tweet, but the spokesman for former President Bill Clinton responded to the president retweeting it saying, quote, ridiculous and of course not true, and Donald Trump knows it. Has he triggered the 25th Amendment yet? Personal attacks, bigotry, and insane conspiracy theories. Officials say Epstein died by apparent suicide while in the custody of the federal government. There's still so much we don't know. Brown writes that there's still more evidence that hasn't been published, including, quote, Epstein kept video cameras in most of his residences, and Epstein's autopsy, nor the report of the investigation into his death, has ever been made public. This isn't going to go away. The public, you're being played for fools here. President.
And who's playing us for the fool there, Jake? You are. Dude, I love that. Maze, if you're not following Maze on Twitter, you should be, because they put out fantastic videos like that pretty frequently. I don't know how they find all these old clips, because I'll go down the rabbit hole sometimes to try to find some.
Oh, and they get erased for sure.
Yep. But I mean, this is one of the great pieces of modern technology and the internet. Look at that. It's him in his own words, 6 years apart. Couldn't be any more different. Just politics as usual, guys.
He's a newsman. He was saying some of the most opinionated, vitriolic things in there.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to show you what the post does, right?
But
But I
it's
will show you the
conspiracy
comment about the 25th Amendment, which I'm going to try to push really hard.
Yeah.
On State of the Union by CNN.
Oh, man.
All right, we need to go over the pond, because as it starts there, it tends to make its way over here to a Governor American Psycho. Of course, after it goes to Canada and Fidel Castro's son, who's not in charge anymore, but somebody who's probably worse is in charge. Reporting from the Telegraph. Look into your future, America. Divorcee forced to pay half of ex-husband's trans surgery.
Oh, boy.
In a legal first.
What the heck?
Setting the precedent. So a divorcee has been forced by a judge to pay half for her ex-husband's trans surgery. But in what is believed to be the first case of its kind, the judge said that the surgery was a need, not a whim.
Oh, boy.
Therefore, it was reasonable for the cost to be met out of their joint funds as opposed to their separate funds. The husband, at age 58, had said that the argument was like saying someone who had cancer should not have the surgery.
Oh,
in 2022, the husband informed his wife that he was intending to transition to a woman and commenced hormone therapy at the stage. 2 months later, the wife issued divorce proceedings, as she's probably wise to do. The husband had surgery 2 years later, 2024, after they had been separated for almost 2 years, but because divorces take so long, I guess they still were technically married and sharing assets. And the bill for his transition was £160,000, which would be about $220,000 that now the wife is on the hook for paying half of.
Dude.
It's a need, Garrett.
It's a need. Sure. Yes, it's a need. And at that age, 58, I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's a Saturday. I'm feeling a little extra empathetic or something. I'm not sure, but I'm just thinking of this poor woman. Your husband,
had children together. Yeah.
Like, what? And so now you're almost 60. You should be looking forward, leaning into the twilight of your marriage and your life together. And suddenly you're a trans dude. You're a trans woman. Whatever that is, which we know is nothing.
Dude who feels pretty, who abandoned his wife in her golden years and is now taking over $100,000 of her nest egg. And I don't know what their situation was as far as, are they uber wealthy? Was she an income earner here? But it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
There's the familial aspect to it, the cultural rot aspect to it. And how about it costs $250,000 to chop your penis off?
Right.
Tell me again that this isn't an industry that's being encouraged.
Right. That's precisely what it is. And doctors, I would assume even across the pond there, that they have a similar Hippocratic oath type ordeal.
Into an oak.
But where it's, hey, do no harm, and you need to take care of people, you need to treat people. And then you've got this crazy person saying it's like cancer. give me
And
a
the
freaking
judge
break.
agrees. And
Yeah.
they're fancy judges over there. They still wear white wigs.
Yes, they do. And that's another piece of the cultural rot, and the bigger impact is you've got judges that have forsaken truth and forsaken righteousness, and they're the ones making the decision. Good luck. And we've seen that enough here. We've seen that enough just in the last 6 months with the Boasberg types just trying to step in the way of the executive branch. But this is a whole nother level when judges start ruling along these lines, because society or culture, just the loudest voices in society or in culture, are telling you you have to do these things, and you're a bigot if you don't, and you don't get to decide what I am or what I'm not, and oh, my wife has to help pay for this surgery as well. This is insanity.
Insanity on the LGBT of the Rainbow Kamikaze over there in Europe. And they also have adjoining, we're going to go to the climate pagans that are over there, but don't worry, we'll bring it back to America as well, because we still, it starts over there, comes over here, and we're fully all in on that on the climate paganism side. So 2 stories on this, which are good eating for a nice Saturday grab bag here on the American Radicals podcast. So this comes from the Straits Times. Shocker, breaking news, Brianna Morella style. Fossil fuels set to fill Europe's power gap as wind power plunges. So output from coal plants in major markets, including Germany, France, Spain, is going to jump 50% this month compared to last month. That's in response to a 40% plunge in wind power. So I guess they aren't so sustainable and reliable anymore. And then we'll take it then the next piece over, which I can't stop laughing at. It's from E&E News, which is arm of Politico. Air pollution is worse near electric vehicle charging, according to a study. So these EV drivers are going to breathe in polluted air when they get a quick fill up at high-powered charging stations. What causes the pollution is likely not the charging station itself, but toxic dust kicked up by the nearby power cabinet as it tries to cool itself off. Well, I thought this was, for the better good, the greater good. What about your EV is now killing me? Can I sue?
I love this. I think this is my favorite story of the day. You're kicking up toxic dust by your charging station. I can't help think of the kid on The Simpsons. I'm helping, because that's all I'm seeing in my mind's eye right now with the climate pagans who loved Elon Musk and Tesla because they were going to change the world, and now they hate him because he helped literally Hitler become president. And now it turns out you're more toxic than we are with our unleaded fuel.
So we have madness going on with the climate pagans and the T's of the LGBTQ Rainbow Plus Kamikaze. We have to get the trifecta, right? We have to go to the racialists.
Oh, yes.
So I got a nice video for you here. Did you know that there's 10 ways you can say the N-word without saying it? First Amendment absolutist here.
10 ways you say the N-word without saying the N-word. If you use any of these terms or phrases in reference to Black people, you are just as racist as the person that actually uses the N-word. Here are the words: thug, ghetto, welfare queen, lazy, race baiter, race grifter, threatening, angry, dangerous. Or you say that we're playing the victim or we are a diversity hire. What you actually mean to say is the N-word. Just stop it. If you say these words or phrases, you are calling us the N-word. If you say these ignorant racist terms or phrases around your children, you're also teaching your children to be racist just like you. So I have good news and bad news for you. Here's the bad news. You're not as non-racist as you thought you were, and you're certainly not anti-racist. Here's the good news. You can unlearn all the racist crap you've been taught and reject white supremacist ideologies that you've believed for your entire life.
So I'm really inclined to take advice from a person who's reading and can't pronounce white supremacist. And who is the audience for this one? Garrett, I'm going to answer it for you. I'm ready. Ready? Who's the audience for this one? Who is clapping wrong, going, "Yas, queen"? It's these people.
Classic awful AWFL, affluent white female liberals. They're a scourge.
The best clip out there. Yes, it's them. my will to live was nearly sapped, and that clip was not even a minute, I don't think. If you call somebody lazy, you're racist. Guess what? Ghetto queen. You white people are lazy too, and there are some, not many, but some Asians who are lazy, and some black people, and some Native Americans, and some Indians, and some, you fill in the blank. There's lazy people all over.
That's misinformation. I've never met a lazy Asian person. All right, I need a cleanse of the palate after having watched that. But this isn't the palate cleanse. This will be a nice story, though, to send us off into your thoughts. And because America's so back, we got high priorities. Reporting from the BBC, it's just better. Donald Trump says Coca-Cola will use cane sugar in U.S. drinks. Why is the president negotiating the ingredients in Coca-Cola? But President Donald Trump says Coca-Cola agreed to use real cane sugar in its drinks sold in the United States. Coca-Cola uses corn syrup in its American products. But Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. has voiced concerns about the ingredients' health impacts. Are we going to go back to cocaine as well? That's really the ultimate question.
I mean, that's what made it great, allegedly, was their secret recipe, including the cocaina. I get, okay, like, sure, this is a win, I suppose. I had Coca-Cola in Mexico, and it tastes a little bit different and better. But do I really care about this? Not really, because you shouldn't be dumping fizzy carbonated soda drinks down your gullet, regardless of if it's corn syrup or sugar. So,
and Donald Trump drinks Diet Coke anyway. Why does he care? He doesn't drink sugar.
Great point. What does he care? Which aspartame and whatever else is in that is probably worse.
All right. I got to do it. I wasn't going to do it. I'm going to pull it back. I have got 2 palate cleanse videos. One I kind of feel a little bit guilty about, but it is Saturday.
Don't worry.
Play that.
And we'll cleanse your soul after
Then you will cleanse our soul, Garrett. This is, there could be some young men in the audience here on the American Radicals podcast that maybe you're about to get, married. You found the right woman. I think this guy went in with the intentions of being a little bit funny and just reminding his wife how awesome he was. So he apparently invited a woman who's been stalking him romantically as a guest to the wedding and handed her a mic.
Oh boy.
And it went suboptimal.
Not a good idea, gents.
You are so lucky. You are the luckiest woman in the world. Dan is such a great guy. He's got everything a woman could ever want. He's kind, generous, successful, gorgeous. He's got an incredible body. I'm just gonna speak from my heart. I would do anything to be you, Carolyn. No, really, I would. Because Dan, you never even gave us a chance. You never even gave us a chance. I'm the one who taught you to make crab cakes, and it wasn't for you. You would still be making Krabby Patties, so.
Okay.
Oh, you need to send me the link to this. I have to watch the rest.
Crazy woman goes crazy.
Yes.
I mean,
Wow.
I think he probably thought, like, I'm just going to give my wife a nice reminder of how awesome I am. But you don't empower crazy women because in the end,
you definitely don't give them a mic.
And they wind up being like
classic awful AWFL, affluent white female liberals. They're a scourge.
Or they're just crazy one way.
They're a scourge.
I feel dirty. Garrett, go ahead. Pray us out.
All right. We're moving into new territory here today, Steve. This is well, I'll get there in a second. We're going to start with Matthew 5. Just a couple verses, Matthew 5, 13 through 16. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. And we are moving into a new sermon as well, starting with this episode. and it's called Jesus in Controversy. And the pastor is a guy named Josh Howerton, who I didn't know who he was until right around when this sermon came out. My brother-in-law introduced it to me, and he even prefaced it by saying, I don't think this guy is your typical style. And I kind of laughed. And honestly, when we first started listening, I was like, he's right. He's not my typical style. But I learned a lot listening to this sermon the first time, which was roughly, you could see it if you're watching, it says up in the corner there, April 16th, 2023. So it was about a month prior to when we testified. And I think I listened to it, or he introduced it to me maybe like a week later. So it was like within a month of when we testified. And because I try to be open-minded, I try to critically think. There's a verse in 1 John that talks, I think it's in 1 John. It talks about testing the spirits. And to me, that's always been an aspect of discernment. And whoever the pastor, preacher, priest, speaker, author, whatever the case may be, it's important for us to test the spirits and to ascertain if what they're saying is aligned with biblical truth. And so that's more where I was headed when I first listened to it. I was like, yeah, okay, maybe this guy is not quote unquote my style, but he has become one of my favorites. Definitely a really good follow on Instagram, because he puts out really good like short content that I like. But also, he's the lead pastor of this church in Texas and puts out some really good sermons. And this one, I even listened to it, Steve, on the way down to Washington, D.C. Like, I remember being in Chicago, my whole family's asleep in our van, and I'm just like driving to D.C. like, all right, I'm testifying tomorrow. And I listened to a lot of sermons on that trip, but this was one I listened to. And interestingly enough, this used to be on YouTube. I could not find it. YouTube nuked it off of YouTube, or they took it down because YouTube demonetized it. I don't know the details there, because that's where I used to listen to it. So, but I pulled it up on their site, and we'll just let it play for a little bit, and we'll be coming back here probably at least 2 more times.
That's a caricature. Now, are you noticing this? Here's what a caricature is. When an artist caricatures something, what they do is they'll exaggerate some characteristics of a person, and they'll either like minimize or eliminate other characteristics of a person for a desired effect. So exaggerate some characteristics, minimize or eliminate other characteristics for a desired effect. Now, let me land the plane and get into a different emotional gear. My fear is that this is what many people do with Jesus who claim to follow him. That there are aspects of Jesus that we tend to exaggerate and blow up really, really big and depict. This is a huge part of following Jesus. And then other aspects of Jesus that we tend to downplay, minimize, silence, or honestly even deny. And very frankly, a lot of times the reason that we do this is because we're trying to, selectively edit a picture of Jesus that will be palatable to the world and the people around us. This is what it means to caricature Christ rather than to present Christ as the character of the living God. Now, what I want to say here is that I just need to lean in and remind us, guys, Jesus is a Lord. He is not a mascot. That when we come to Jesus, what we do is we submit our agendas to him as Lord. We do not ask him to become a mascot for our agendas, because he is a Lord and he is not a mascot. So as we come into this, here's what I want to do is I want to, in this series, lean in to a lot of these things that they're a little more controversial. The aspects of Jesus that are extremely biblical, but that there is an internal tendency to want to downplay, minimize, avoid, deny these aspects of the teaching of Jesus, and we end up with a caricature. So we're just going to lean in. I'm going to tell you exactly where we're going in this series so that you have a heads up. During this, not in this particular order, we'll hit Jesus, women, and leadership. We'll hit Jesus and the sexual revolution. Jesus and politics. I'm doing that way before 2024. We're gonna get Jesus and religion, and Jesus and mammon. Now, I just also want to say this. So, Pastor Josh, why are you doing this series? Why would you do this? You're gonna do that for 5 weeks. I'll see you in 6. That kind of thing. Well, here's why I'm doing this. Very frankly, I'll just give you one reason. It's because, guys, our culture is not silent on these issues, so it's unwise for me to be silent about them as a pastor. That like what we've got to do, that's right, listen, thank you. We've got to, now, you're clapping now, you might not be when I teach them, okay? That what we've got to understand, this is like a mantra, you hear it from me all the time, that guys, if the church won't disciple people, the world will. And what my job as a pastor is to tell you the truth, to declare the whole counsel of God when it's in season and when it's out of season, so that I can create resilient disciples who are in the midst of a world that is trying to mold you into its pattern. But our job is to be counterformed, not into the pattern of this world, but into the character of Jesus. And so we're going to lean into all these things, and we're going to do it. I'm giving away part of the sermon later. We're going to do it with grace and with truth. So let's lean in now. In order to, here's the whole purpose of this week 1 sermon. My working theory is that you, as a follower of Jesus, will not have an open heart for the rest of the series unless you understand this title of the sermon, Jesus and Controversy. That's the title of this sermon. Jesus and Controversy. So we're going to lean into this together. Now, let me just make this point that I don't think is tremendously surprising to many people. As you look around at our culture, what you're going to notice right now is that it seems that following Jesus faithfully and publicly is increasingly more controversial. I'll give you, if you don't believe me, I honestly don't know how I can help you. I'll just give you one example of this. The picture I'm getting ready to show you is an actual picture of downtown New York City in 1956, all right? So that's for real, just take this in. That's downtown New York City in 1956. Now, anybody got that happening again in 2024 on your bingo card? Anybody got that? I didn't think so.
All right, we'll pause it there. If you're just listening, it's this picture from New York City where the tallest buildings of the skyline have their lights lit in a way that each one is portraying a cross. Certainly not going to see that today, but I think that's a good little intro into where we're headed with Jesus and Controversy, and we'll stick there for a few more episodes at least.
All right, and for the second palate cleanse of the day, I got out of having to be in the heat for Saturday football practice, and I'm just thinking about my dad. It's a Saturday. He's probably out there playing some golf. So I got a nice palate cleanse about a trick shot on the golf course that I'm going to challenge him to try to achieve on his own today.
That's awesome.
Always get a hole in one. Just dig the hole right there. All right. That's going to do it for us today on the American Radicals podcast. Saturday edition, Saturday grab bag. Back with you Tuesday here on rumble.com/amradpod, 10:30 Eastern time, guys. Until then, have a great weekend.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.